Um, Today we're going to be having a look at eyes, uh, windows to the soul, the what we often think of as the most important thing um, uh, about a face. That the eyes seem to be the first thing we see, but they're not necessarily the soul sort of communicator, if you like. Um, it's as much to do with how the muscles around the eyes are working. So eyebrows are very expressive, cheeks are very expressive, and they're all around the eyes. The eyes themselves actually have a great deal of consistency that we can rely on because they're fixed into our skull, and that's a very helpful thing. Um, so how the flesh around the eyes moves is expressive, and gives someone their expression and those things we're trying to convey. But how the eyes sit in the skull is very try pushing your eyes forwards. Go on, have a go. You can't do it. You can't move them from side to side. They're stuck. So this is the perfect place to start going from the basic anatomy. So we'll be having a little revisit of the skull. If you've got your own source material, have that handy, and we can look for these qualities as we go along. So I'll just go over to my other piano. It's a Victor Borge reference. When we look at our skull, remember how we started out simplifying things. We were looking at the structure of the brain box effectively, and then we just left a gap in order to find the cheekbones. And that gap we left effectively gave us eye sockets, but we didn't do a great deal more than that in terms of figuring out their shape and how they're arranged. Because again, we're simplifying, and simplifying is the order of the day. But if I bring this forwards, it should. I'll do it for Antoni here. Now see if I can. Here we are. You can see there's a bit more going on. It's not just a straight line across the top. It dips down at the sides. See that dip at the sides? So if you've got an image in front of you, also what we think of as the bridge of the nose, get a bit better light on here. You see, crikey, just dropping everything. Holding myself behind the camera while we do it. We've got this shape here. Okay, but if we look into the eye sockets, we can see that shape thickens up. Sorry, I'm holding it with my right hand. I shouldn't be doing that. That shape thickens up as we go in. And you can feel it if you prod your own skull, you can feel the bridge of your nose, and then you move your fingers back and you find once you get to where your tear ducts are, it's getting wider already as we go inwards. And so that's basically increasing the distance. By the time we get to the position where the eyes are, which is right inside the sockets, they're further apart than the bridge of the nose alone would suggest. And that's what gives us this distance. Now we can see the little conduits inside there for the tear ducts and what have you, all that stuff. The nerves go through the back, so that's one less thing that is on the front that we have to think about. So yeah, wow. Things everywhere. I just stubbed my toe, and you're all here, so I can't swear. So now it really hurts. Okay. Right, let's focus on our paper again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put out a few simple rules, if you like. I don't like to use the word rules, but if I go ahead and say, there's the bottom of my brain box, and then there's a gap for the eyes. And if I think of that as a letterbox going across the skull, going across the face, it might appear different to the different people. Some people, their cheekbones might seem higher. Some people might have a deeper brow, if you like, which would make that letterbox thinner. But it's still a letterbox shape. We can still see a height and a width. And what we're going to see is this kind of a little bit of space at the sides, and then effectively 3 boxes. Okay. I've made the middle one slightly thinner, but actually I could make it about the same. There we are. Make that a bit wider there, maybe. Yeah, that's fine. They don't have to be completely square. They just have to be even in distance. If they're too long, that gives you some clue as to what might be happening, but don't overthink it. And because the forehead and the sides of the head start to curve off on one side, we also get this slope in the eye socket. So I'm going to just take the top corner off there, like that. And you can see that here. I've exaggerated it ever so slightly. Quite, doggo. Okay. We've also got this slope up into the bridge of the nose. So if you have a look, you might be able to see that on your person. You might not, but I'll just put those shapes in there. Okay, and what we've got is this distance. Now there's a little bit more eye socket here, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to put an eye in to these sockets. Now this bottom bit sort of holds them up, stops them dropping down out of our head. This corner gives us a clue as to sort of where that eye sits. So what I'm going to do is just put an eye, a sphere, if you like, a circle into that shape. Okay, and I'll do the same the other side. And I want you to, if you've got your subject matter there, have a look, see if you can see what size circle that would be. Okay. So make it a bit bigger all the way out to the side. Okay. And you can see how that cut off at the top and that cut off at the bottom, which gives us a more accurate shape of the eye socket, kind of holds the eyes in place, if you like. These corners also represent a kind of a slope around the side of the head. We'll get to that when we look at profiles. What we're going to see with the iris is it's about 1/3 of that height. Some people it seems slightly larger, sometimes it seems people it seems slightly smaller, but it's about 1/3 of that height. So if I get that 1/3, you see that? And I put a circle in there, that's roughly the size of the iris. The pupil is actually just a little dot in the middle. That's the aperture of your eye. But yeah, so the iris here, and I'll just give that a little bit of tone, just so it doesn't look quite so creepy. There's no getting around this looking creepy. Actually, it's going to keep looking creepy. But now we have a couple of eyes in sockets. Okay, now that bridge of the nose is in between those two things here. Okay, the top of the nasal cavity kind of creeps up into that shape there. So it's looking a bit Terminator already, isn't it? Okay, but these are the basic forms and how they fit together, and there is no really strict geometry. But if you're getting too far away from this general plan, this general layout, then things are going to start looking odd. And it is quite easy to see the eyes too big or too small. Sometimes it's nice to rather exaggerate the size of the eyes, but you want to be conscious that you're doing it. You want to be in control of it. Now, I'm going to imagine some lighting from the top left. So let's put that coming from up there. Okay, and I'm just going to put some shade on that lower side of the eye. There you go. That was simple. Okay, and then I'm going to attach some other shapes to these. Okay, now the inner corner of the eye, it can vary, but the inner corner of the eye, I can't remember what that red bit's called, but and it's sort of, it's also where your tear duct is anyway, so I'll just call it the tear duct. We saw it attached to the skull and it was sort of in the inside corner. So I usually, look for it around level with the bottom of the iris. So I'll put a little bit there and I'll put a little bit there. It might be slightly higher with some people. It won't be really be any lower than that. So let's move it up. Let's, just put it just below the level of the pupil. So it's in that lower bit. Okay. And the outer corner of the eye, the outer eyelid, will kind of move all the way to this edge. Because when we look in profile, we'll see that it goes roughly halfway back across the eye at most. Again, sometimes it's less. Okay, but that will tend to be a bit higher up. It does depend, and sometimes the skin over the top might make a line that goes right down. But in terms of where that eye closes off, I'm going to put it about level on either side. And the eyelid, the upper lid, generally covers more of the eye than the lower lid. So we're better at looking down than we are at looking up. You have to make an effort to look up, but you can look down almost just with your peripheral vision. Apparently not well enough to not stub your toe, but but yeah, we've got a fairly good idea of what's at our feet, which is useful. Okay, now all I'm going to do is I'm going to create an eyelid. Now, eyelids come in all different shapes, but there's usually a bit of a change of direction. So it's usually quite tight to that corner, and then it changes direction and comes across the top of the iris. So I'll do the same on that side. There you are. And you can see that this curve kind of follows the orb of the eyeball, that shape of the eyeball. You see that? Because it's quite near the middle, it's fairly flat. Same thing here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit of shadow underneath it because it has a thickness, the eyelid. So I'll put a bit of shadow underneath it. Seems the light's coming from above. Okay, and then I'll have a bit of extra shadow over that side and a bit of extra shadow over this side. And so we can still see the spherical quality of those eyes. There's no lower lids in or anything like that yet. But we can see the area that the eyelid has to cover. Okay, so let's put in a lower lid. Now the lower lid will usually come underneath the iris. So unless we're quite squinty, and some people are very squinty, some of us more than others. But again, this will sort of do the opposite of the upper lid. It would tend to be a bit more open around this side. Okay, and now because this is catching the light, it's not going to be that bright. It's actually going to be light at the top of the eyelid. It's the shadow underneath that is going to be stronger. So it's where that eyelid rolls over is where we're going to get the stronger darks. And we've usually, sometimes it's even brighter than the eyeball itself. It's the same kind of thing here. Underneath, this bit's going to be brighter. Probably brighter than the white of the eye, but extra shadow under here, where it kind of rolls over. Okay. Now, around where this corner of the eye socket is where there's a change in the type of skin. So that thin skin underneath the eye changes to the thick skin of the side of the nose and the cheek. And so we tend to get this is why, you know, we get these sort of dark lines there if we're overly tired, or yeah, I've had mine forever. So they never made school at what I considered a reasonable hour, so I used to sleep from a very young age. But yeah, but that's yeah, that's thinner skin here is going to show up as differently. So can you see a couple of eyes appearing? Okay, now there's more to do here because the perceived eye socket, remember that this bridge of the nose is thinner at the front. Well, this gives us extra shadow on the inside. Okay, so I'm going to take the top of that and create an area of shadow that goes in here. I'll do the same with this side. And so this is effectively like the wall of the inside of the eye socket, where we have this dip, and it creates this deep shadow on the inside. Let's chuck a bit more of that in. All right. So now can you see the eyes in context with the bridge of the nose? Now, a different thing happens on the outside, because here we've got the outside of the eye socket, and so that's creating an area of that's going to stick out, that's going to catch the light. You see that? The this area here tends to dip in a bit, so I'll put a mild shadow in there. And then I can soften the edge of these sockets here, because that usually isn't a very sharp shadow. Okay, we can see that coming. Now, the last thing is eyebrows. Now, if you prod your own eyebrows, eyebrows really can turn up in different places. And they are a feature of the skin, not of the skull, which is why they're mobile and move around. It's also the reason if you shave off someone's eyebrows, you can still see where they're meant to go. I know some people pluck their eyebrows and then draw them back on, and they'll know, you know, if you've ever done that, then you know you have to draw them on where they're meant to go. You can't really play around too much with where they're meant to be, because there's this ridge of skin which is fairly obvious. And when someone has drawn their eyebrows on in a different place, it just doesn't look quite right. It's a slightly odd thing. So this skin here is going to start to sort of stretch out over those lighter areas. Where the eyebrow goes, I'm going to put in an eyebrow here, and it generally follows. It might come up a bit above the line of the eye socket. Okay. And then it will go along with the line of the eye socket to a certain extent, and then it will travel outside of the line of the eye socket. And so we get this area of light inside the eyebrow, and it's something that we often miss because we think, well, underneath the eyebrows is shadow. Well, not necessarily. There might be a bit here, but there'll be this area of light underneath the eyebrow line around this side of the eye. And it's where there's this bulge at the edge of the eye socket, which is going to catch the light. So we'll do the same thing over here. We'll give them a bit of extra eyebrow there. Follow the line of the eye socket and then go out beyond it. Yes, the eyebrows tend to tail off towards that. Yeah, once they get past the middle, there's a main bit here.
and then it sort of trails off a bit. There you go. See that? So it's still got that soft skin under the eye there. I'll put some of that shadow back, but it's still following. You can still see the spherical quality of the eye there. So has everyone sort of got a grip on the idea of spherical eyes now?
Mm.
I'll refine the shape of that iris a little bit, put some pupils in. There we go. Now, if I were to jump ahead, don't worry about doing this bit, but if I put in some structure for the nose, the bottom of the nasal cavity there, then the septum is going to go here. The nostrils will sort of wrap around that point there. We're lighting it from this side, so I'll put some shadow on that side of the nose. And you can see those eyes make sense now. So we've discovered a few things. We've discovered there's this sort of border shape here that gives us this shadow. That's actually part of the sort of the side of the nose, it almost, more than it is part of the eye socket. We've got this area underneath the eyebrow, which is actually the outside of the eye socket. So it's going to be more likely to catch some light. Okay. We've got this transition at the bottom of the eye socket from one type of skin to another. So that's also going to, you know, be a difference between where there's light and where there's shadow. I haven't even got as far as any nostrils yet. And all of it is based around these spheres being stuck in. Now, this is a fairly straight on approach. Okay, borrow a little bit extra shadow over there. But suppose we had someone looking up or squinting their eyes. Well, their eyeballs aren't going to move. So the eyeballs are still going to be stuck there in a different way. So if I wanted someone looking very surprised, I could move their eyebrows up. I could move up their upper lids, so more of their eyeball is showing. You know, they could be pulling a face where, you know, they're sort of stretching their face out, so it pulls down the lower lids. But the relationship between the sockets and the eyeballs is still going to be kind of the same. Okay. Sorry, that was a bit tiny, wasn't it? There you are. So it's not perfect, but you know, it's a start. Now, this is for your viewing pleasure. So this is just a quick little analysis. If I get this, okay, right. So this is a straight-on image of some eyes, and I'm just going to show you those same things I was talking about before, which are, hang on. Okay, so if I were to put in just a ball shape, try drawing around it with your mind, or you know, wave your finger in front of the screen if that helps, to try and think of where that ball shape would be. I'm going with the right eye, stage left. And there it is. Makes sense, yeah? And can you see that that iris is about a third? This line is too thick, obviously, but you know, we're looking at the outer edge.
kind of thing. But anyway, it's all ballpark. But it seems like there's quite a lot of distance between one eye and the other, isn't there? So if I put in the eye socket, can you see how there's this border here, which is still the side of the nose, effectively? The eye socket hasn't effectively really started yet because we haven't got to the level where the eye is. So it's eye socket, but it's also nose. It's sort of both. It's each and yet neither. We can see here this slope here. You see where that light is underneath the eyebrow? That comes with that slope there. And then how the shape of the eyeball is described by the eyelid. I didn't even get to putting in sort of the extra skin at the top of the eyes. Some of us have more than others. I don't think rugby helps, to be honest. Okay, so if I do the other eye as well, it's quite hard to judge that distance between them because we've got this shape of the nose thing. You know, the side of the nose. It's confusing, and different people have different thicknesses of bridge of the nose. You know, that's that will vary from one person to another. So it can be quite confusing, but in that sense. But if we think about the eyes and look at how the corners of the eyes actually extend beyond the eyeball because of the skin around it. So they kind of reach the edges of the eye socket. So the eye socket is a good thing to be thinking about if we don't include this section here. So some people might have a thin bridge of the nose, but obviously that would make this space bigger. So that's one thing that might make it look like someone's eyes are too far apart. You know, that's where that phenomenon is created. You know, if I then put in a third one in between, can you see how there's three across pretty much?
Yeah.
You see that? It's interesting, isn't it? So it's a rather odd thing to do, but they're off again. The hounds are out. Yeah, so that's a little quick look at. I'm going to take that away again. We can kind of imagine it in the space now. If you're thinking in a purely drawing way, it's not hard to imagine that space. If we're thinking in terms of eyes, it seems to make much less sense because we're distracted by this other information. Same principle as the triangles, really. It's a way of stepping out of that thinking of a face for long enough to see something new. So have a look at your own subject matter, see if you can spot that. Okay, but something different is going to happen when we look at profiles. So here we are. We go to this chapter here. I'll just zoom in on him. Oh, no, that's the wrong one, isn't it? Right, no, that's different. No, okay, we are here. So we've got a face in profile. Okay. Now we can do exactly the same thing of saying, well, let's make a circle roughly the right size, and it's probably about that, isn't it? But because it's in profile, it's much harder to see what's going on. But what we can do is we can look at the fronts of the eyes. Okay, and so I'm just going to do this freehand with a brush. Oh, come back. Yes, fine. I'll zoom in a bit more. So no, it's not very high resolution, but it doesn't need to be. It's perfectly fine for our purposes. Now, if I were to, let's go with green. Oh, okay. No, I have got some layers. So I could put that eyeball in there. Okay, and if I put the next one in, just exactly the same shape, then as we approach a profile, they get closer together. So that third thing only works straight on. As soon as you get a slight turn of the head, it's going to start to go. But what we can be sure of is that there's a steady relationship between them. So we can generally use the same size. You'd have to be very close to someone for one of their eyeballs to look bigger than the other. You know, you'd have to be right up close. So we can pretty much, you know, treat them as the same size. And we can level them using things like the line of the brow. So you can see that there. And again, if we're if we're really close up, it would get distorted. But usually we're far enough away that we could use the line of the mouth in a similar way. So obviously not the turn of the mouth, how it meets from one corner to the other. So that would be one corner. So it would slope up ever so slightly, but it's fairly flat. And so is this, slopes up ever so slightly. You see we've got these other clues as to how to keep those eyes level, but we could also just look at, you know, one iris to another, okay, and connect them together with a line. Now, if we do that line here, so I've turned it into a triangle because just because of the nature of these tools, but this line we'll make that smaller, is you can see where the center of the line is, and it's not at the bridge of the nose anywhere near. It's all the way back here. The bridge of the nose is all the way in front of here. So I'll just change color very slightly to, let's go for a red. So this distance here is how far back the bridge of the nose is from the center point between the eyes. And I understand how this can become confusing. So there's more than one way of thinking of this, but can you think of this three-dimensionally? Now. So let's do this line again a few times. Okay, there it is. And there it is. So if this person were wearing glasses, the point of the glasses they're looking at is here and here. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's good.
And so when we've got someone in profile, we can still use the same principle for putting the eyeballs in a row. They're not moving around in relation to one another. In the sense, they're not moving around in the skull, but the different prominences of different parts of the skull, particularly the bridge of the nose, which will vary from one person to another. Why some people might look like they have sunken eyes. Their eyes are in the same place as everyone else's, but they've got a larger bridge of the nose. And so it makes their eyes look further back, especially if they have a strong brow as well. Some people will have quite a shallow brow and quite a shallow bridge of the nose. And, you know, with different parts of the world, you get effects. So, yeah, if you look at Chinese people and Japanese people, both have a less prominent bridge of the nose and a less prominent brow, which means their eyes look like they're further forward in their head, but they're not. They're in the same place. If you go to, you know, if you look at people who've, I suppose, you know, all men have a dose of testosterone, you know, when they're, well, throughout their life, and certainly when they're growing, that makes the brow more prominent. So so you get that sort of that deeper shadow from there. That will vary from one person to another. It can be very pronounced with people who are sort of, you know, get that extra big dosage. So Martin Johnson's a good example. The ex-England rugby captain. He's got two brows. He's got one on top of the other. It's just like it's quite twice as much as everyone else. It makes his eyes look a lot further back. It's quite interesting. But yeah, so this would be useful if I wanted to draw glasses on this person. Let's pick another color again. Let's go for a dark blue, just so that. So let's give him some glasses, and just for the sake of making it simple, let's give him some John Lennon glasses. So that's the bridge of his glasses. Okay, and then there, I do it wonky, but that's one lens, and I want this point to be in the middle. Okay, and then here, so that'd be a bit further across, wouldn't it? Because that needs to same distance both sides, and then that's the other lens. You see how those glasses do kind of fit on his head?
Yeah.
Obviously they're very tiny glasses, but yeah, you get the idea. So that's it's a lot to you know, it all looks a bit nonsensical now, but if I take that away again, we can see how those these points are level, and so by inference, these points are level somewhere deep inside his head. So you don't have to connect the bridge of the nose to the eyes. You know, you can figure out how much it sticks out in front. And if we take away these other layers, we can see how much his bridge of his nose obscures that other eye.
Yeah.
Now, what we often do is we'll do the bridge of the nose and then we'll try and go around the corner and draw the other eye in. And we'll end up with this widened face on the other side. When we move it back, it feels wrong. But if we're just connecting those eyeballs together in this with the same relationship that the line of the brow and the mouth have, then that can be quite revealing. It's no surprise that we can only see one side of his mouth, and the other one is sort of completely hidden. And it's the same thing with the eyes. So that's a good way of looking at it. There's a few other things about eyes which are useful to bear in mind. We kind of covered them with that demonstration, but I'll go into them with a bit more detail. We tend to think of eyes as sort of an almond shape cut out of the face, because really that is kind of how they appear. Thinking of them as spheres inside eye sockets is really useful for anchoring them to the anatomy of the face. But we don't always want to think that way. Sometimes just a hint of a shape can suggest an eye. We don't want to be doing all that other stuff necessarily on the page. Just thinking about it is a reminder enough. And so I wanted to look at a few sort of little shortcuts that we use, and how we can sort of embellish them or sort of redress that approach to adapt them to a real depiction of the anatomy. I had the skull earlier. I'm going to bring that up again. And there's an interesting quality with this skull. Yeah, let's get this screen share up and running. There it is. Okay. And one rather good thing about it top comes off. Come on. It's meant to. Yay. Okay. Right, don't try this at home. And if I bring this across, we can see this structure of where the eye sockets go. Hang on, I'll get them focused, that might help. So I'm leaning over the camera while I do this. So we can see where the eye sockets are. We can see this sort of space above. And if we look down from here, we can see the shape of the eye sockets behind. Okay. But then if we look at that, we can also see this curve. This curve, which is, part of the forehead, really, where these bits come out at the side. That's that ridge that is underneath the eyebrow. You can see it on this side as well. So I'm trying to do this by screen. It's like cutting your own hair with a mirror.
Okay. Now, because we can see that curve, you can see how much further back that ridge is there. And see, and look at it in relation to the eye socket. So we can see a lot more of the eye from this side, sorry, from this side, than we can here. And that's also part of the nature of our vision. If I close my right eye and look right, really I can just see the side of my nose. I mean, which you know, probably got more obstruction than most, but there you go. So you can see when we look directly from the side, you see how much further back this is. And so when we're looking from the side, we're going to see a certain amount of eyeball here, which even when it's turned in 3/4, we're not going to see here. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
So the corner of the eye on the inside is further forward than the corner of the eye on the outside.
Right.
How
on earth are we going to show that in a picture?
Well, I am. That's next. So what we can do is we can effectively model that effect. And like I said, I'm going to do it by looking at a few simple shortcuts that we tend to do. So, okay, that's still in the same place, right? So quite often, when we do an eye from the side profile, so say I've got some forehead there, bridge of the nose, right? I'll do a few of these. Okay. Who recognizes this? You drawn an eye from the side like that before?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that look okay?
As a cartoon.
A bit too far forward.
Exactly.
The eyes
This
too
is a
far
really
forward.
common
Yeah.
mistake. So have a look at how far back from the, remember we figured out how far the bridge of the nose sticks forward, right? We've got this whole distance before we get anywhere near the corner of the eye. So that eyeball is going to go back here. Okay. The other thing, so that's that fixed, right? The other thing that happens all the time is we see this. Do you recognize that?
Well, they're not equal angle.
No, they're not equal. What I've done here is I've put this corner of the eye, well, sometimes I see it go really far back. Sometimes I see people do this. Right? So that's an exaggeration, but it's still a thing I see people do. Okay. This isn't taking into account the fact that it's a sphere. But remember that iris, if I measured that at this height, so I'll do another one here. Oh, hang on, I can't see the screen at the same time. So yeah, let's move down a bit. So yeah, if I go here, yeah, slightly different brow shape, but never mind. Okay, so first of all, if I look at where the iris is, it's from, sometimes we make it too round as well. So sometimes you'll see this. There's like a round iris on the front. From the side, it's going to be much more shallow. It'll probably be just pretty much like a line. Okay, I've done that too high up, but well, whatever. Okay, if I take that height and I put another third underneath it and above it, that's the size of my eyeball. Okay, so I put that on like that. Okay, that outside corner of the eye, this corner here, is going to be no more than halfway back, sometimes considerably less. So if I take this point here halfway back Okay. And I put it in front like this. I've got this extra distance here. Okay. Then I'll put a little bit of eyelid there. Okay, if I get rid of the rest of that, you see how much more sense that makes?
Bigger than you think, isn't it?
Yeah, so the eyeball's bigger than you think, but the actual space it takes up in profile
It's not so big.
is, yeah, it's going to be smaller. In fact, I can probably even shrink down that iris there. I'm working with a big lump of charcoal here, there, so you get the idea. So we've got that bottom of the eye socket here. And it's going to lean across on that side, just like it does here. See that?
Yeah.
That ridge over the top. So let's give them an eyebrow. Let's tuck it down at the bottom. Let's put that bit at the top, and then it will tail it off at the side. So it goes around the corner like that. That bit of light at the top. That bit of extra shadow behind. Bit of extra shadow underneath there. A little bit over here. And we have ourselves a far more convincing eye in a socket. See that?
I do.
Okay, but it's gone from this shortcut. Now there's nothing wrong with that little shortcut. It can work really nicely if you bear that stuff in mind. If I do the same thing again, and I just draw in space, and I can say, okay, well, I can see there's an eyebrow here or whatever. So that's where the front of the iris is. So that's about the size of the eyeballs. That'll go around. So that's about my middle point. And then you can just jot in an eye like that. And that can do everything you need it to. You see that? So it's the same few simple lines. It's the same shortcut, but it's informed by this sort of other level of observation. And you can see how much better this looks than this or this. Hang on, I'll lean around my chair. Yeah, so, you know, we're going to get onto noses next week, but do the same kind of thing with understanding where the nose goes. There you are. So already it's starting to look, you know, fairly convincing. We've got that bit of highlight there, so, you know, I could work into it bit by bit. But yeah, you get the idea. So that's an idea of a sort of a shortcut adapted. We can do the same thing if we look at, there you are, the eye from the front the same way. We want to draw this sort of almond shape kind of thing. Everyone recognize that? That's the classic shortcut, you know. But the thing is, it looks like an eye. If you ask someone what that is, they'd say it's an eye. You know, it works. It's got the right qualities we need to communicate that this is that almond shape cut out of the face with a pupil. But arranging I'm going to do this much bigger now. Arranging the areas of flesh around the eye. So I'll do the same thing here. I'll come back to this later on. But if I were to do, again, we'll do a ball, we'll put an iris in it. Okay. With a pupil in the middle. There you are. A little bit wonky, but it's not too bad. Okay, we've got this corner of the eye down here. Probably done that too low. We've got where it joins up over the top here. So if I wrap an eyelid around that, okay, I'm following that curve. Okay, if I wrap this lower lid around it, I'm following that curve. And it's slightly more curved, you know, as a result, because it's slightly lower down, slightly further away from the center, you know. So an eyelid, right, you know, the drooping eyelid will end up being a much straighter line. Does that make sense? So we could do a tired eye. Oh dear, so I'm doing this from a distance. So let's do an eye that's tired. Let's take that. And let's just do a fairly straight line over the top. And then the lower lid can be pretty much the same. Oh, feeling sleepy? Same approach. I haven't had to do a different kind of drawing. There isn't a new kind of eye that looks tired. You know, it's the same. But it's just that upper lid has moved down. So everything else, all those structures we build, we can use them repeatedly. We don't have to keep doing it in a new way. So if I were to carry on with this one, that upper lid folds into the skin above it. So if you close your eyelid, there's enough eyelid to cover your whole eye, and your top eyelid goes all the way down to the bottom. That's how it works. The bottom eyelid doesn't really come up. You'd have to squint to make that move. Okay, so as this lifts, it's going to start to fold. So even this eyelid will have a fold in it, you know, and it will, again, follow the contours of the eye. Here, it's really going to crease up around the top. As it gets towards the edge, that crease is going to become more shallow. Okay, but it's going to be sort of denser here. Same with the lower lid, you know, there's sort of this shadow underneath it. Okay. Now, how do we take this and do it with this? Well, what we do is, to start off with, I'd look at the shape of the iris, realize how much of the top I could see, which might not be that much. Okay, relate that to the corner of the eye, and then wrap it around that shape. There's the lower lid. We'll wrap it around that sphere. And then the same thing has started to produce something a bit different. So same thing here, the fold of the eyelid, that little shadow underneath. So a similarly simple approach has produced something very different. I haven't even put any shading into this. But yeah, so I've got that upper lid. I'm going to have more shade at the top of the iris to make that pupil darker. More shade on the top of the eyeball. The lower part of the eyeball is liable to be a bit more shade. So yeah, so no particular highlights or anything like that. That tendency to do white for the whites of the eyes to separate them out, I would tend to just use a skin color and maybe lighten it slightly. Sometimes it really does look bluer, but not an awful lot. So I've got this in a socket. So remember, I've got this sort of deeper shadow in here. That's where the deepest, darkest, what's the word? It's not crease, crevice of the eye socket, if you like, comes across. Shadow underneath the ridge of the brow and where the eyebrow goes. And then lighter over here. Same thing with putting an eyebrow in. and then comes across. So it looks a bit odd with that eye next to it, doesn't it? But you get the idea. Okay, so there's the bridge of the nose over here. I don't know what kind of eyebrow that is. Seems to be a bit bushier in the corner. There you go. So that's, so these little shortcuts are fine, but you can temper them with observations of other sort of anatomical qualities. And with that in mind, it can really help make sense of things. So the last thing I would say with this is, I'm racing through this rather, is going back to that idea of the skull and the eye sockets. Now, if we did the same thing we did sort of up at the top here, in fact, I'll put it next to this. What we can do is we can imagine a top view, and I'm going to have somebody at a 3/4 angle. So I'm going to do a 45-degree angle here. Okay. And same thing, let's do an eyeball there. Okay. Let's do the socket. And then same kind of space again.
Could you lower it slightly, James, please?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, I see what you mean. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Good. Okay. And then room for another eyeball here. Okay. And it needs to be roughly the same size, which it is. So if we imagine looking from above, we could say, well, I know this eyelid travels around the front of the eyeball, and no more than halfway back is it still visible. Okay, this one isn't much different, but it is slightly further in front, and that's the corner of the eye there. We've got this wall of the side, what would be the side of the nose. We do it both sides if you like, and do them slightly different. And then we've got the bridge of the nose, which sort of sticks out. Okay, could even be even more than that. Let's put an iris on each of these. Okay, so I know it seems pretty odd, but if we relate it back to this, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Okay, so that is going to be going around the side of the head. The cheekbones, go slightly in front of the eyeballs, which is why you can't slap yourself in the front of the eyeball, so your cheek gets in the way, which is good for everyone, really. Okay, there's the front of the nose, sort of the rings of the nose, if you like. So I know an aerial view is rather unusual, but it's still useful to do. So there we go. So there's the outside corners of the eyes leading to the inside corners of the eyes. So when we think of this shape, looking from above, then looking at it from the side can perhaps make a little bit more sense. And I'll tell you what, I'll get another piece of paper. And what we'll do is we'll transfer this down. So this is entertainment purposes. Whoa. Let's take that on there. Good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, so there's sort of side of the nose. So I'm going to take that line down here. Okay, that's edge of that eyeball. I'm going to take that line down here. That's edge of that eyeball as it's visible. I'm going to take that down here. That's corner of that eye. Take that down here. This is obscured. That's the edge of the iris. Take that down here. Well, it's moved across a bit. Okay, so if I start filling this in now, I can say, okay, well, there's an iris. Okay, There's the edge of the nose. Okay, I won't worry about eyebrows or anything like that. There's the edge of the cheek here.
We can't quite see what you're doing.
Oh,
Jane.
sorry. Yeah, I'll zoom out. Oh, yeah. No, I see what you mean. So yes, all I'm doing is, sorry, beg your pardon.
Thank
I can't see
you.
the screen. So yeah, so all I'm doing is I'm moving these downwards. So I've put in an iris level with there. There it is. It's about that wide. So that's about that wide.
Mm.
Okay. I can take the equivalent width of the eyeball, and that's about, well, it's about the same as my charcoal, isn't it? So I can put that here.
Yeah.
So I can say there's the top of an eyeball and there's the bottom. So that iris needs to be a bit taller. Okay. That's the side of the eyeball there, which means the inside of it goes about here, but I don't need to worry about that. Okay, that's the inside corner of an eye there. And there's the iris right in front of it. You see that?
Yeah.
Same again. Okay, and then the same thing with the height of the eyeball, which is about, yeah, so that's about it. Okay, this corner of the eye is back here. So let's wrap that around. So it's going around that corner. So you see how it had to wrap that around to meet up to here? Okay. Now this here would go there. So I'll skip this bit of dotted line. Okay, and then we can't see the other side. Well, that's probably too high as well. So the same thing there. Go. There's the fold of the eyelid. There's the fold of the eyelid there. It's going to stick in front a little bit. That's the edge of the sort of the bridge of the nose, if you like. So that's all that distance going in towards the eye socket. Okay, and here, what's that? Is that the edge of the nose? Maybe it should have been back here. Anyway. Move the eyebrow across, put the skin around it. Can you see two eyes looking out now?
Mm.
Yes.
Now, it could be that that should be further across, maybe a little bit. I don't know. But there's not a lot in it. There's a little bit of that there. That's the rest of the inside of the eye socket. That's that slanty bit that comes across that goes around the side. Let's give them an eyebrow. Not going to see the other side of that eyebrow, really. There you are. So now we have a face in profile. See how that happened?
Yeah.
Now, while I was doing that, I thought this can't be right, that can't be right. The nose won't go here. That distance is too large. And I take a step back and go, oh no, it's fine. Right? So this is the constant battle. It's to
Arguing with yourself.
allow ourselves, yeah, don't argue with yourself. Allow yourself to discover. If it's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong. You may as well just do it, get it wrong and find out what happened. Because by using a process like this, you can discover at what point it went wrong, and you can go back to that point. You can go, I must be doing this wrong. This must need improving. Yeah, zoom out a little bit. There we are. So that's sort of the principle behind it. So I know it might seem a little bit mathematical, but there's you can see how these principles apply. Corner of the eye, inside corner of the eye, iris, bridge of the nose. That could probably move back a little bit. But you get the idea. Corner of the eye in there. Like I said, I've made them look a bit surprised, but we can easily change that. Let's calm them down a little bit. There you are. A bit more relaxed now. So you can see how small this side of the, because the bridge of the nose can really confuse us. The actual middle point, center of the bridge, in between the eyes there, behind the bridge of the nose, is here. Right? And this is all distracting us. This is sticking out. And we can't see that point, and it's very hard to imagine where it is, but you can imagine the inside corner of that eye being here, and the inside corner of this eye being here. And look, so halfway between them is around here. Thinking of that rather, and then putting the nose on afterwards can really make sense. Now, with certain things like Jilly's granddaughter, small children have much shallower, certainly the bridge of their nose is much shallower. Babies, they've just got a little bump in the middle of their face, it's not really a nose at all, it doesn't count. So that's going to change these dimensions, which is why in Jilly's picture there's more of the other eye showing. But there's a few things to look for. Look at the angle and how much thinner the iris is across than it is tall, because of the angle you're looking from. So, straight on they'll be round, but from an angle they've got a lot thinner. We've got this distance, we know how tall they should be, and they're about right, but they've got a lot thinner by going at that angle. You see that?
Yes.
So it could be, that's another thing, if they become too round, that could look wrong. So there's lots of little places to trip up there. But doing a little, if you've got your source material, what I'd like us to do now, and I'm going to come round and have a look at what everyone's doing individually, try and figure out, how we can use some of this. Just on a spare piece of paper, try to map out what's happening with those structures. And if you can, this is way over the top, but if you can take a couple of these observations and say, you know what, I need a bit of help here. I need something to reinforce some structure. So, some measurements I can trust, and some way of understanding how this turned head will have moved these shapes around a great deal, and discover where they go. Then, hopefully you'll be able to do what I just did, which is ignore what my sensible brain was telling me and actually just discover what this delivers. And it's quite a surprise.